As I went down in the valley to pray, studying about that good old way, when you shall wear the starry crown, good Lord, show me the way. By and by we'll all go down, all go down, all go down. By and by we'll all go down, down in the valley to pray.
Everyone here is in our physical audience has taken a little bit of a risk to come here today, so thank you for boldly stepping into our space, the socially distanced space. For those of you who are with us online, we're going to have a few minutes here for question and answer. Hopefully you've got some thoughts you want to share. We don't have a lot of time, but let's start to dig into this and keep the conversation going. I want to thank the Orange County Community Remembrance Coalition, the Arts Council. I want to thank all of my team. You all know I love you. They were named earlier by Renee Price. Thank you very much for naming those. And I want to make sure Liz Grimes Dressler, because her husband, Charles Dressler, is a wonderful, wonderful individual as well. I want to just get ready to answer any questions that might be there. So, Katie, I think you've got something for me?
Yeah, this is a question from a viewer on Facebook. And she would like to know, how do you think the great activists of our history would specifically respond to the current efforts to suppress voting rights and otherwise disenfranchise Black and brown people?
Yeah, I think that they would put their bodies on the line as they did in their time. And I think that because they had the context of actual clear-cut, unabashed, unfettered racism, they could see it and call it. I think today we have so many euphemisms, and we say, well, it's just, it's gerrymandering. We have these terms that people don't even understand, so they get confused, and we have lost some of the context because some folks who are here with us today don't remember that struggle. So I think that they would say, they would, like I'm doing in this piece, they would see the haunting dots as they connect and say, no, y'all did this a few decades ago, centuries ago, and I see the same thing happening in different ways. So I think that they hopefully would certainly recognize that we've come a long way in many ways, but some of these elements of limiting voting on, not having voting on Sundays or not having additional voting or limiting early voting, how does that help the democratic process? You can't justify that, but what I can do is trace that to poll taxes and to the repression and to the threats that happened to Black people after Reconstruction. So I think they would help us to connect the dots, and I think they would stand strong and vociferously out against those efforts. Thank you for that question, Facebook friend. It's Chris Dressler, right, Thomas? I got so many Charles and Christopher. Thank you. They helped to put all this together. And I'm on my Todd stool. I got to give a shout out to Todd, our man with the plan. He created the stool for us, or painted it. So thank you, Todd. Got a young man here. I know him. You gonna ask a question? Oh, okay. Water. Thank you. Thank you. That's my son Sterling, by the way. So I got to play him. I got to play Langston in the back as well.
Sonny, we have another question from Facebook. Let's see. I'm just going to read the whole comment. Thank you for bringing together so much into this performance. I learned history I didn't know, and your personal stories of you and your son are powerful. What is the impact for you of working with this difficult material? Does it bring healing and empowerment? Do you need to do self-care after your performance, and how has it evolved?
People often ask me how I have the capacity to do this work, and I feel that performance, in this space of performance, whether you're a visual artist, a performing artist like myself, it can certainly be a place of healing. And I don't want to say catharsis, because in the sense of Brecht, I don't want to have a catharsis and walk away like, oh, I've had my experience, but I want people to be convicted and challenged. And so for me, I feel like I'm doing my part here. So that's why I can jump right into a talkback and I'm still right here with you, because this drives me. I look at those baby boys up there and I think about the voice of my wife, the first and last voice that you heard. So y'all make sure you give her an air high five and tell her how beautiful she sang today. Think about the people that I'm connected to and why this work matters. So I'm driven. Then I look up at the screen, I see people like Ida B. Wells and Frederick Douglass, and people like that little boy who's locked in. He looks like my nephew Joshua. I look at that picture and I think, you locked up and you destroyed the lives of lives of people are still being destroyed, and there's work to be done. So I leave it all on the stage, and that for me is not only empowering, but it certainly is a healing element. And I believe that this change we're looking for, social transformation, it is a process, not a product. So that helps to keep me inspired, because I'm not expecting everybody to just suddenly get it, suddenly change laws and protocols. But I think if we can just start to have these conversations and push and stretch, as we have over the years, right? Look what happened in Georgia with the presidential election this year. Regardless of your party, you have to realize that people rose up and made a difference in a place, in a way that they didn't think could be done. There's work to be done, and there are hearts that can be turned and empowered and lifted up. And I think that this work right here, shout out to Mike Wiley, I think he's watching right now, he's really inspired my work. Mitchell Capel, great storytellers. The work that they've done has inspired me and encouraged me to say, you know what, I want to keep performing this stuff, not to dredge up history, but to empower us to imagine something better. Let's acknowledge what was there, and then let's deconstruct that and reconstruct something better. I'm not talking about a revolution and burning the whole place down, but I am talking about a revolution where rebuilding the place and holding on to some of that great stuff. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women, people are created equal. That's some beautiful stuff. Let's keep that, but let's live up to it, right? So yeah, I'm driven by that, and I have to give a shout out to my dad. I lost my dad this year on the fateful day of January 6th to COVID, and he was a great teacher and a great man, and he lives in me, and I thank him for driving me on. I know he's sitting up in the seats telling me how neat he thinks this is. He used to use the word neat a lot. That's neat, son. So I hope he thinks this is neat. That helps me.
I have a question. One of our YouTube watchers would say, if you could do one thing today to change our society, what would you recommend?
One thing today to change our society is to invest in communities who need it the most. We talk a lot about reparations, and I think there's a case for reparations, but it's so complicated, and there's so many different state and federal stipulations and statutes that it's going to be really difficult to make happen. I know some communities are doing it, but what if we every day, if we see people like somebody who cleans your hotel room, don't leave a hotel without leaving a tip. Leave something. Like, we always talk about, well, we got to have better rights. We got to have a livable wage. We got it. And then we sit back and look at Mitch McConnell, and we look at Lindsey Graham, and we look at, I'm saying Republicans, right? But you can look at Kamala, you look at President Biden. Look, you do something. What if we today started redistributing our own wealth to people that we know who need it most? What if we invest in organizations like Fayetteville Urban Ministry, the Find a Friend program? I travel around the world and I perform at a pretty high level. It's just glory to God. I'm not trying to say that I'm all that, but I can demand a pretty high price. But I will always perform for the kids at Find a Friend who are majority black, but more importantly, majority low income, low wealth people who need encouragement. I will perform for them free every day, all day. And so we got to find ways to invest in communities who need it most. Instead of waiting for that 40 acres and a mule, let's take what we got and let's go to those who are most downtrodden, those who are marginalized and left out, and find ways to creatively not only invest in them, but build up philanthropy. Local philanthropy and institutional philanthropy that's going to constantly be funding and encouraging and lifting people up. So that's what I want people to do. I want people to go to Boomerang Youth Incorporated right here in Orange County and invest in them. My birthday was yesterday, and so if you go to Facebook, if you want to friend me on Facebook, try to get $2,000 to help them. When a kid gets suspended from the schools in Chapel Hill and Orange County areas, that kid can go to Boomerang, get a snack, get love, get encouragement, get lifted up, get challenged to do better, certainly, but also not be disconnected. They're inspired, they're built up, and they're reconnected. That's the kind of stuff we got to invest in and stop waiting for teachers and politicians and pundits and preachers to do it. Let's do it now.
Yeah.
Hey, Sonny, it's CJ.
Hey, CJ, poet laureate.
It's such an honor to see the show.
It means a lot from you, brother. It means a lot from you. You're amazing.
Full of gratitude. I'm particularly interested in your relationship to the South as an artist, like being not necessarily from the South, I went to high school, like the West Coast, and what particularly, as an artist who's from the South and see a lot of people move here, and with our last year, a lot of people are like leaving those big city clubs and being like, I'm in to buy a cheap house in the South. And so what is the sort of like responsibility that you hold? How do you think about as an artist, like being someone who's not from here, but also being a part of telling the story and the narrative of the rich history that is here in the South?
Thank you, proud son of the South, being yourself, in a good sense. Well, first of all, I'm a Southern Californian. But my wife's laughing. She is born and raised in Fayetteville. She's the primary reason why I stayed, because I was like, oh, it's worth staying in the South for this beautiful lady. But I will say, I fell in love with my wife first, then I fell in love with the South, because I had a reason to stay, and then I started paying attention and seeing that when people call you baby and honey and darling, they're not flirting with you. I love that. They're just saying that they see you. And I have to say this. I came to the South from Southern California thinking that I would instantly experience racism and I would instantly experience marginalization and the cold shoulder. And that happens here and there. But for me, by and large, I've had more people who don't look like me look at me and see me and say hello and check in with me than I had in California. We don't have time for each other in Southern California, right? But here's the thing. So I'm a transplant and I learned to love this place and learn to love that this is fertile soil. The fact that we do stop and say, how y'all doing? Hello. It gives us time to have critical conversations with each other. If we do it right, we can move people's hearts and minds and have our own hearts and minds moved, right? So I love that about the South. We slow things down. As you all see, my speech impediment has not improved. I'm still going fast. But my heart and my mind are slowed down. I see people now more because I've learned that from my wife, from family, from living down here. But I also have to remember, CJ, that I do come from here. When you think about it, the overwhelming majority of African Americans in this country, if you look back and look at the records, they came from Virginia. They came from, because we were brought here to work mostly the crops in the South. Now there are some that are originally from the North, but when you look at my mom's side of the family, it's Virginia. If you go back to, they were generations in California, but it was Virginia, and my dad's side of the family, it was Louisiana and Texas. And so what happened was because Jim Crow and because it was so harsh, there was this mass exodus, right? And so August Wilson does a lot of beautiful work about how black people went up north and west, right? And he does a lot of the stories about blacks who went up to Pittsburgh, etc. And so many of the black folks who are in New York, in Philly, in California, etc. That's why you can still sometimes catch it. And I know it's a stereotype, but you can oftentimes tell if you're talking to a black person or not. We have common roots that started in the South. There are isms that our grandmas and grannies and big mamas and big papas taught us, and they carried down through the South, right? And so it's still my home in that sense. It's my heritage, my ancestral home. And I'm glad to be back. I had a friend of mine who told me recently, I was looking at this beautiful picture of the Great Exodus where black people were leaving the South during those times after Reconstruction. And there's this beautiful picture of a man holding, I think, a baby or a package in one hand, and he's pulling a mattress with his elderly mother or grandmother and just walking, literally walking north. I mean, that's how austere and that's how desperate they were. And so I feel like it's such a great honor to my ancestors to be walking back, coming back home and building up and retaking our rightful place, which is not above anyone, but it is humanity, and it is the celebration of art and voices that you lift up. So to be here and to be able to be part of that system, or that process, to me, is a chance to honor my ancestors, to take back some dignity that they lost when they had to drag themselves out. My native ancestors who went through the Trail of Tears, etc. I'm coming back home. It's taking the claim,
Sonny, we have one more question from Facebook, if we have time. Do you do any work with, or have you considered working with the police department to help them understand these patterns in society and break the cycle?
I have, and I hope to continue to do it and do more of it. One of my mentors, True Pettigrew, he's a founder of an organization called True Access, TRU. So if you just Google True Pettigrew, TRU is his first name, Pettigrew, Pettigrew, I believe. And he does some great work with a man named Tony Godwin, who's actually the interim police chief of Apex right now. And they've been doing some work around building communication and connection between communities. And they do this thing that they started in Cary a few years back. It's called, I think it's called Barbershop, Barbershop Sundays or Saturdays. It's the first Saturday of every month, so it's Barbershop Saturday. It's rap sessions, barbershop rap sessions. And they come together, and these diverse communities have tough conversations with the police officers, and everybody comes and hangs out. It's not about calling them out or about lambasting them. It's about us just sitting down and having conversations. And it's amazing when you look at the testimonies of police officers, the barbers, black people, and all people in the community. There's this resounding sense of, wow, that wasn't so difficult. This relief, like, you don't bite, we can talk. And they're making moves in that process toward, I've had people tell me, don't say reconciliation because we were never reconciled. So toward reckoning, right? But peaceful and gracious reckoning. And I will say this, True taught me that if you do this work, you must always be willing and ready to meet people where they are, not where you want them to be. And and love them for whom they are, not who you want them to be, then and only then can you lead them to where they need to go. And maybe you can be led to where you need to go and be enriched. So I have worked with state troopers. I've been very honored to do some equity and inclusion training with them using poetry and art, and I love it. The thing that I talked to a room full of about 40 salty state troopers who are 15 years and higher, right? And I'm a relatively young, at least I look young, black man, and there was mostly white people in the room. There might have been 2 or 3 black people, and they were looking at me like another diversity, equity, and inclusion training. Okay, here we go. And I opened up with poetry. I opened up with James Patrick Kinney's poem about the cold within, and it just, these walls started dropping. And I realized that when I started bringing poetry, it wasn't that I was sambo and dancing, I'm not talking about that. But I brought poetry that was meaningful, and then I connected it to the training, and I looked them in the eyes, and I asked them for their stories, and I wanted to hear what they thought and what they experienced. All of a sudden, we were all like warming up to each other and having tough conversations, and I was saying some stuff that I thought might have offended them, and they were saying some stuff they thought might have offended me, but we were somehow family in the midst of that connective tissue of artistry and performance. So I just thought that was a wonderful thing. So yeah, please do bring me out. I would be glad to come to your trainings or to conversations amongst police officers and civilians. I do want to say shout out to the Raleigh PAC, the Raleigh Police Accountability Community Task Force, and Rolanda Bird, who is a mother of a son who was killed by a police officer in Raleigh, and she has taken on the lead of this organization trying to bring accountability to police officers and to drop that blue wall of silence. I love police officers. My grandfather was a police officer. My father was military police in the Marines. Love a cop, or whatever you want to be called, police officer, law officer. I'll call you whatever you want to be called. I love you. And you need to be held accountable, just like every good person does. I need to be held accountable. So let's do better at that. And so Rolanda Bird, after I did a performance of the talk, she actually motivated and inspired some white folks to come and join her, because she'd been going downtown to city council and trying to get the Raleigh Police Department to allow for some more civilian accountability, and they were not hearing her. And then she got a team of her team and then some other diverse people coming together, and then the city realized, oh, okay, there's some purse string power here. There's some people who vote here. Let us adjust. And just, I think it was last year, the city just started having real conversations about a civilian accountability board. That would not have happened if people hadn't kept coming and having these conversations and really coming together. It wasn't just white or black, it was together. So yeah, I think that work needs to be done in terms of training, but also in terms of working together to respectfully hold police officers accountable. We can exhale too. Thank you all for your loving witness tonight. You really encouraged me and helped me through. Yeah, it's a blessing to be able to do this work. I'll just challenge you as I challenge everyone when I speak to a group. Please commit yourself to engage with, invest in, and spend time and break bread with people who don't look like, live like, or love like you. Then go back to your groups, people who do look like, live like, and love like you, and tell them about the wonderful experience you had with those humans over there that are not the other, but rather humans. And then I want to challenge you to go out and do something to make a difference. Find people who are downtrodden, who are disrespected, who are marginalized. And don't be a savior. You can't be a savior, but what you can do is invest. Invest in good ground and watch the fruit of your labor, preferably anonymously, watch the fruit of your labor move us toward justice, toward equity, toward, most importantly, love. God bless you. Thank you.
As I went down in the valley to pray, studying about that good old way, when you shall wear the starry crown, good Lord, show me the way. By and by we'll all go down, all go down, all go down. By and by we'll all go down, down in the valley to pray.